October 18th, 1944. The Ardennes Forest, Belgium. As dawn broke through the misty canopy, Oberleutnant Klaus Müller of the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion gazed confidently through his commander's viewport. His Tiger I tank, designated 308, sat concealed among the dense pines, engine idling at a low rumble that vibrated through his bones. "The Americans will be crossing this valley within the hour," he assured his crew. "And when they do, we will demonstrate why German armor remains superior to anything the Allies can field." Little did Müller know that this engagement would fundamentally challenge everything he believed about panzer superiority and transform the tactical approach of Tiger commanders across the Western Front. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. This is the tale of how a single encounter between the legendary German Tiger tanks and a new American secret weapon, the Sherman Jumbo, would create a psychological effect so powerful that German Tiger commanders would actively avoid these American tanks for the remainder of the war. The autumn morning was unusually cold as Müller's tank company, 5 operational Tiger I tanks, awaited the American Armored Column intelligence had reported moving toward the vital crossroads at Röttgen. Each 56-ton Tiger represented the pinnacle of German armored engineering. Their 88mm KWK-36 guns could penetrate any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters, while their 100mm frontal armor had proven nearly impervious to standard American 75mm Sherman tank shells. Production statistics revealed the disparity between the opponents. By October 1944, Germany had produced 1,347 Tigers, both models, compared to America's 49,234 Sherman tanks of all variants. "The mathematics are simple," Müller had explained during the previous night's briefing. "Each Tiger must destroy 10 enemy tanks to achieve parity. But we possess qualitative superiority. One Tiger can engage 5 Shermans simultaneously and prevail." This was not mere propaganda. Combat records from Normandy showed Tigers regularly achieving 10-to-1 kill ratios against standard Shermans. The crews called American Shermans Ronsons after the cigarette lighter advertisement. Lights first time, every time. Unteroffizier Dieter Weber, Müller's gunner, had accumulated 23 confirmed kills since June. "The Americans are brave but foolish," he observed while cleaning his gun sight. "They attack frontally without reconnaissance. Their tanks burn easily. After 3 or 4 are destroyed, they retreat." Meanwhile, 12 kilometers away, Captain Robert Callahan of the 743rd Tank Battalion studied his map under the dim light of a shielded flashlight. His company included 15 standard M4A3 Shermans and 5 of the new M4A3E2 Jumbo Sherman variants that had arrived just 1 week earlier. The Jumbo featured significantly upgraded armor, 101mm on the glacis plate, sloped at 47 degrees for an effective thickness of 150mm, and a new cast turret with 152mm frontal armor, making it nearly impervious to the Tiger's feared 88mm gun at normal combat ranges. "The standard procedure against Tigers is to avoid direct engagement," Callahan reminded his officers. "Use mobility, attack from flanks, or call in air support. But with these Jumbos, we have something new. They've up-armored these beasts to withstand direct hits from the 88. Intelligence wants us to test this theory." First Lieutenant Michael Sullivan commanded Devastator, one of the new Jumbos. He harbored serious reservations. 5 inches of frontal armor sounds impressive on paper, he told his crew, "but I've seen what those 88s can do. They cut through our regular Shermans like a blowtorch through butter." Technical Sergeant James Wilson, Sullivan's driver, examined the enhanced transmission with appreciation. "This baby weighs 42 tons, over 10 tons heavier than a standard Sherman. But they've reinforced the final drives and suspension. She's slower, but tougher." Sergeant Frank Rodriguez, Sullivan's gunner, was less impressed with the retained 75mm gun. All this armor, at 0742 hours, Unteroffizier Weber spotted the first American tanks through his scope. 5 Shermans, approaching from the southwest, range 1,900 meters, he reported calmly. Through his binoculars, Müller noted something unusual about the lead tanks. They appeared bulkier, with distinctively different turrets than the typical Shermans his company had engaged previously. Wait for them to close to 1,500 meters, Muller ordered. We will engage simultaneously on my command. The 5 concealed Tigers tracked their targets, gunners making final adjustments for wind and elevation. At precisely 0749 hours, Muller gave the order. Fire. 5 88mm shells streaked across the valley, leaving white vapor trails in the morning air. Technical Sergeant Wilson saw the muzzle flashes an instant before impact. Incoming, he shouted. Lieutenant Sullivan braced himself for the inevitable, having seen dozens of Shermans burst into flames from direct Tiger hits. The 88mm armor-piercing round struck Devastator's turret with a deafening clang that reverberated through the tank's interior like a massive bell. But there was no penetration, no spalling, no fire. We're hit, Sullivan exclaimed, momentarily stunned by the impact, but quickly realizing they remained intact. Status report. All systems operational, Wilson responded, amazement evident in his voice. That bounced right off. On the German side, Weber stared in disbelief through his scope. No effect. Direct hit on the turret, but no penetration. Muller's Tiger fired again, this time aiming for the Sherman's hull. Again, the shell struck but failed to penetrate the heavily armored glassy plate. Sergeant Rodriguez seized the moment. Target acquired. Range 1,450 meters. Sullivan, still processing their survival, gave the order. Fire. The Sherman's 75mm gun flashed, and its shell fell short of the Tiger. However, the revelation was electrifying. They could withstand direct hits from the feared 88mm gun. Private First Class Eddie Morales, Sullivan's loader, had been in combat since D-Day. He'd loaded thousands of rounds, watched dozens of Shermans brew up from German fire. His hands trembled as he loaded another round. Sir, we took a direct hit from an 88, and we're still here. I can't believe it. The radio crackled as reports flooded in from other jumbo commanders experiencing the same phenomenon. Lieutenant William Buck Taylor in Colossus reported, direct hit on turret. No penetration. I repeat, no penetration. Captain Callahan, monitoring the radio traffic from his command Sherman, immediately recognized the strategic opportunity. His West Point training had emphasized psychological warfare as much as tactics. All jumbos advance. Draw their fire. Standard Shermans, move to flanking positions. The moment represented a dramatic reversal in tank warfare psychology that had dominated the European theater since the Tigers first appeared in Tunisia in 1942. American tankers had developed a near-superstitious fear of the German heavies, with good reason. Technical analysis from Aberdeen Proving Ground had confirmed that the standard Sherman's 75mm gun needed to close to within 100 meters to penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor, suicidally close range. Meanwhile, the Tiger could destroy a Sherman from over 2,000 meters away. What followed was a textbook demonstration of how armor psychology could shift in a single engagement. The 5 jumbo Shermans advanced directly toward the German position, seemingly impervious to frontal fire from the Tiger's main guns. Each impact that failed to penetrate visibly shook the German crew's confidence. Corporal Werner Hartmann, loader in Tiger 312, had never seen their feared 88mm rounds fail to penetrate enemy armor. As he rammed another round into the breach, he glanced at his commander. What kind of tanks are these, Herr Oberfeldwebel? Oberfeldwebel Heinrich Schroeder, commanding Tiger 312, reported with increasing concern through the battalion radio net. 3 hits on the lead Sherman. No effect. They're still advancing. His voice, normally confident and methodical, carried an unmistakable note of alarm. Major Stefan Heidler, the battalion operations officer monitoring communications from headquarters 5 kilometers back, initially assumed Schroeder was exaggerating. Confirm your report, 312. Are you certain of hits? The response came back immediately. Confirmed hits. Observed impact. No effect. Request artillery support. In Tiger 308, Muller watched through his binoculars as the lead Sherman, hit multiple times, continued its advance undeterred. His mind raced through calculations, wondering if they'd somehow encountered the mythical Soviet IS. 3 heavy tank rumored to be deployed to Western allies. But these were clearly Sherman's, just different somehow. Muller made a critical decision. Target their tracks and gun mantlets. Find weak points. The Tigers adjusted their aim, focusing on the areas where even the Jumbo's enhanced armor might prove vulnerable. A shot from Weber's gun struck Devastator's running gear, immobilizing it. "We're tracked," Wilson reported, but the tank remained in the fight, its turret fully operational. The shell had severed the left track at the second road wheel. The distinctive snap and clatter of broken track links told every tanker in the vicinity what had happened. Inside Devastator, the crew felt the lurch as the tank slewed sideways, its momentum carrying it forward several meters before the naked sprocket wheel dug into the soft Belgian soil. "Driver, haul down behind that rise," Sullivan ordered. Wilson expertly positioned the damaged tank to minimize its exposure, using a small hillock to shield the vulnerable hull while keeping the turret's thick frontal armor facing the enemy. The 152 millimeters of cast steel turret armor, nearly 3 times thicker than a standard Sherman, had already proven its worth. Sullivan swiveled his turret and acquired one of the Tigers attempting to reposition. The German tank was maneuvering sideways, trying to bring its thinner side armor away from the American tank's line of fire. Through his periscope, Sullivan could see the distinctive overlapping road wheels and the long 88 mm gun that had terrorized Allied tankers for years. "Gunner, HVAP round. Target at 10 o'clock, 900 meters," Sullivan called. Rodriguez loaded one of their precious few armor-piercing composite rigid rounds, special tungsten core ammunition with enhanced penetrating power. These rounds were in chronically short supply. Each jumbo carried only 5 of the specialized shells, reserved for the hardest targets. The tungsten core contained in the HVAP round was denser than standard steel penetrators, allowing it to punch through armor that would defeat conventional shells. "HVAP loaded," Rodriguez called, his voice reflecting both excitement and tension. Private Morales checked the breech, confirming it was properly seated. "Breach clear. Fire." The specialized round struck the Tiger's side armor as it maneuvered, penetrating the thinner 60 mm plate at the precise junction between the hull side and the turret ring, one of the tank's few vulnerable points. The tungsten penetrator punched through cleanly, causing catastrophic damage inside. Black smoke began pouring from the German tank as its crew scrambled to abandon the stricken vehicle. Unteroffizier Johann Becker, the Tiger's gunner, was the first to emerge from the commander's hatch, his uniform smoldering from the internal fire. He helped drag his driver, Gefreiter Otto Klein, whose legs had been severely injured by spalling, fragments of armor that broke off inside the tank when the shell penetrated. The American tankers watched the scene unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and solemn recognition. For nearly 2 years, they had been on the receiving end of similar scenes. Shermans burning like torches, crews desperately trying to escape the flames that earned them their grim nickname, Ronson Lighters. "Target destroyed," Rodriguez reported clinically, but there was no celebration in his voice. Tank warfare was impersonal at range, but watching enemy crewmen struggle to evacuate their burning vehicle humanized the conflict in ways that were uncomfortable for men who might face the same fate. By 08:30 hours, the engagement had transformed. The standard Shermans had worked their way to the Tiger's flanks, while the Jumbos continued absorbing frontal hits. 2 Tigers were knocked out, and a third immobilized with track damage. Muller made the difficult call to withdraw before they were completely encircled. As the surviving Tigers retreated, radio communications captured their psychological transformation. "These are not normal Shermans," Muller reported to battalion headquarters. "New variant with enhanced armor. Our 88's ineffective against frontal armor at combat ranges. Request permission to withdraw to secondary positions." Colonel Hans Christmann, the battalion commander, initially refused to believe the report. "Impossible. The 88 penetrates all Allied armor. Maintain position." Muller's response revealed the new reality. "With respect, Herr Oberst, I have personally witnessed 6 direct hits on a single Sherman with no penetration. These are not the same tanks we faced in Normandy." The aftermath of this engagement had far-reaching consequences beyond the tactical victory. Captain Callahan's after-action report detailed the performance of the jumbo Shermans. The M4A3E2 variant demonstrated exceptional survivability against German 88mm fire. Two jumbos sustained multiple direct hits, one receiving 9 confirmed impacts, without penetration to crew compartment. Morale effect on our crews was substantial and positive. Effect on enemy appeared significantly negative. Intelligence analysis of captured German documents later revealed that the 501st Heavy Panzer Battalion issued new tactical directives within 48 hours of the engagement. Encounter with new American Sherman variant, possible designation, E2, indicates frontal armor resistant to 88mm KWK-36 at standard combat ranges. Tigers should avoid frontal engagement with these vehicles. Target tracks, gun mantlets, or flank aspects only. If unable to establish favorable engagement parameters, disengage and reposition rather than risk asset losses. The story of this single battle spread quickly among German armor units. While only 254 jumbo Shermans were produced throughout the war, compared to more than 6,000 Panthers and 1,347 Tigers, their psychological impact far outweighed their numerical presence. German tank crews began reporting jumbo sightings across the front, often misidentifying standard Shermans as the more heavily armored variant. Oberst Christmann later wrote in his personal diary, "The psychological advantage we held since 1943, that our Tigers were invulnerable from the front while capable of destroying any Allied tank, has been compromised. My commanders now hesitate when encountering Shermans, uncertain whether they face standard models or these new armored variants. This hesitation costs critical seconds and has reduced our combat effectiveness." Lieutenant Sullivan's Devastator was repaired and returned to service 3 days after the engagement. The crew proudly added 8 hash marks to their turret, representing the direct hits from Tiger 88mm guns they had survived. When General George Patton inspected the tank during a visit to the front, he remarked, "This, gentlemen, is how you convince the enemy of your determination, not just by destroying his tanks, but by demonstrating that he cannot destroy yours." The broader implications extended beyond individual engagements. German panzer units became increasingly reluctant to engage in direct tank-versus-tank combat without overwhelming advantages. Strategic analysis from German High Command in November 1944 noted, "American production capacity has now yielded qualitative advantages alongside their quantitative superiority. Their ability to field specialized variants addressing specific tactical challenges demonstrates an industrial flexibility we cannot match." Production statistics emphasize this disparity. While Germany had manufactured approximately 1,347 Tigers, 1 and 2, by war's end, American factories produced 2,124 tanks in January 1944 alone, and a total of 49,234 Shermans throughout the war. German industry, under constant bombardment and material shortages, produced an average of 25 Tiger tanks monthly at peak production. Interviews with captured German tank commanders revealed the cumulative psychological effect. Hauptmann Wilhelm Nispel, captured in December 1944, told interrogators, "In the early war years, we knew our technical superiority compensated for Allied numerical advantages. By late 1944, we faced both quantitative and increasingly qualitative disadvantages. The appearance of tanks impervious to our main guns created a crisis of confidence. Every Sherman became a potential jumbo in our minds." The aftermath of the initial engagement continued to influence German tactical doctrine. 3 weeks after the Retgen Crossroads battle, Oberleutnant Muller's reconstituted company encountered American armor near Hurtgen Forest. Radio transcripts revealed his immediate concern. Possible jumbos identified. Do not engage frontally. Reposition for flank shots or withdraw to prepared positions. The tanks in question were actually standard M4A3 Shermans, a misidentification that granted the American unit valuable time to secure their objective. This pattern repeated across the front as German commanders grew increasingly cautious when facing American armor. Meanwhile, American commanders leveraged this psychological advantage. When the 743rd Tank Battalion received 5 additional jumbos in November, Captain Callahan distributed them strategically among his companies rather than concentrating them. The Germans now hesitate when they see any Sherman, he noted in a tactical assessment. By dispersing our jumbos, we extend this hesitation across a wider front. Technical Sergeant Wilson, still driving Devastator, observed the transformation among his fellow tankers. Before the jumbos, we'd lost so many crews that everyone was fatalistic. Now there's a sense we have a fighting chance. Even the regular Sherman crews feel it. The Tigers aren't invincible anymore. By December 1944, German armor tactics had evolved significantly. A captured field manual updated in November specified, when encountering American armor columns, priority reconnaissance must identify potential jumbo variants before engagement. If heavy Shermans are confirmed or suspected, Tigers should maneuver for extreme range advantage, 2,000 plus meters, or refuse engagement entirely until artillery or air support can be coordinated. As winter settled over the Ardennes, the stage was set for Germany's last major offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. German planners specifically accounted for the jumbo threat, allocating additional artillery and anti-tank assets to areas where these heavily armored Shermans had been reported. SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Paper, commander of the Spearhead Kampfgruppe in the 1st SS Panzer Division, received specific intelligence briefings about American armor capabilities. His battle group included King Tiger tanks with a more powerful 88mm KWK 43 gun, theoretically capable of penetrating even jumbo armor at combat ranges. Yet Paper's operational orders contained an unusual tactical directive: avoid direct engagement with American heavy Sherman variants where possible. Utilize artillery and Jagdpanzer tank destroyers to neutralize these threats before committing Tigers. The orders reflected a fundamental transformation in German armor doctrine. Previously, Tiger commanders had been encouraged to seek direct engagement with enemy armor, confident in their technical superiority. By December 1944, that confidence had eroded significantly. General Major Horst Niemak, who commanded the 19th Panzer Division, later wrote in his memoirs, "We began the Ardennes offensive with specific instructions to identify American tank types before engagement. This requirement slowed our reconnaissance and reduced our ability to exploit surprise. When heavy Shermans were identified in a sector, we often diverted forces to find alternative routes, consuming precious time and fuel." Oberleutnant Muller, now promoted to company commander after his tactically sound withdrawal from the October engagement, briefed his expanded unit of 7 operational Tigers the night before the offensive began. The dimly lit bunker was filled with cigarette smoke as he pointed to the tactical map. "Intelligence indicates the American 2nd Armored Division holds the sector north of our advance route. This unit is confirmed to operate multiple jumbo Shermans. We will bypass their known positions and attack softer targets to avoid frontal engagements with these vehicles." His executive officer, Lieutenant Manfred Fischer, raised the obvious question. "Sir, our King Tigers mount the longer 88mm gun with higher velocity. Shouldn't we be able to penetrate these jumbos?" Muller's response reflected the psychological damage already inflicted, possibly at ranges under 1,000 meters. But engaging at such ranges exposes our flanks to their standard Shermans, which remain capable of penetrating our side armor. The strategic objective is to reach the Meuse River, not to test theoretical armor penetration capabilities. When the offensive began on December 16th, multiple German armored units reported deviating from planned routes specifically to avoid areas where jumbos had been identified. This hesitation and rerouting contributed to critical delays in the German advance, hours that allowed American forces to reinforce key positions. In one notable incident during the battle's opening day, a single damaged jumbo commanded by Staff Sergeant Jerome Quinlan held a vital crossroads for 6 hours against elements of the 1st SS Panzer Division. The German unit commander, Sturmbannführer Gustav Nittel, later explained his hesitation to commit his Panthers to a frontal assault. The American tank had established a position with excellent fields of fire. After identifying it as a heavy Sherman variant, I determined that frontal attacks would be costly and potentially ineffective. We attempted to outflank the position, which consumed valuable time and ultimately allowed American reinforcements to arrive. What Knittel didn't know was that Quinlan's jumbo had exhausted its ammunition after the first hour. The crew maintained their position, occasionally starting and revving their engine to suggest operational status, while the German forces maneuvered cautiously to avoid direct engagement. By early 1945, the psychological impact of the jumbo had transcended its actual battlefield presence. German intelligence assessment captured in February stated, American heavy Sherman deployment appears widespread. Unit commanders report engagement hesitation due to inability to distinguish standard Shermans from heavily armored variants at combat ranges. This has reduced the effectiveness of our remaining armored forces and ceded initiative to enemy units. First Lieutenant Sullivan, reflecting on the transformation as his unit advanced into Germany in March 1945, told a correspondent, "When we arrived in Normandy, we were terrified of the Tigers. A single Tiger could hold up an entire company of Shermans. Now, a single jumbo makes Tigers think twice about engaging. That's not just about armor thickness, it's about confidence and psychology." The statistics told a compelling story of this psychological warfare through industrial production. The 254 jumbo Shermans represented just 0.5% of America's total Sherman production, yet their impact on German armor tactics was vastly disproportionate to their numbers. By contrast, Germany's entire Tiger production amounted to less than 1 month of American tank manufacturing output. After the war, Oberst Christmann was interviewed by Allied military historians about the effectiveness of various weapon systems. His assessment of the jumbo Sherman was telling. The Tiger maintained technical superiority in gun performance, range, and precision throughout the conflict. However, the introduction of Sherman variants capable of surviving our main gun created a crisis of confidence among our tank commanders. When our psychological advantage, the belief in our invulnerability and the enemy's vulnerability, was compromised, the actual technical specifications became almost irrelevant. In armored warfare, the psychological dimension often proves decisive. Technical Sergeant Wilson returned to his job as a Michigan automotive factory worker after the war. The transition from tank driver to assembly line worker wasn't easy. The noise of the factory sometimes triggered flashbacks to the metallic cacophony of tank battles. But his experience with the Sherman's mechanical systems made him a natural fit for the booming American automobile industry. In 1956, he wrote in the 743rd Tank Battalion Association newsletter, "The greatest moment of the war for me wasn't when Germany surrendered. It wasn't even when we crossed the Rhine. It was watching that Tiger shell bounce off our front armor and seeing the look on Lieutenant Sullivan's face when he realized we were still alive. That was the moment the war turned for us, not on some map in headquarters, but right there in our minds." The 743rd held annual reunions, and at the 1957 gathering in Detroit, Wilson reunited with several jumbo crew members. They had acquired a certain legendary status among Sherman tankers. Surrounded by younger veterans who had served in standard Shermans, Wilson and his fellow jumbo crewmen found themselves repeatedly telling the story of Wreck-In Crossroads. "The younger guys can't really understand it," he told Sullivan, now a successful insurance executive. "How much it meant to finally have armor that could stand up to an 88. These kids who came in after the jumbos, they never knew what it was like to be in a regular Sherman, knowing you were driving a coffin on tracks." Sergeant Rodriguez had a different post-war experience. The psychological wounds of combat ran deep, and he struggled with what would later be recognized as PTSD. The nightmares featured burning tanks and screaming crewmen, both American and German. He found some peace working as a mechanic in his brother's garage in New Mexico, but rarely spoke about his war experiences. When a military historian contacted him in 1962 for an account of the Wreck-In battle, Rodriguez provided a brief technical assessment. "The jumbo saved lives. Period. Not because it was a great tank. It wasn't. It was undergunned and slow. But it let us face the Tigers without feeling like sacrificial lambs. That changed everything." Captain Callahan, who rose to colonel before retiring from the military in 1961, perhaps summarized it best in his memoir, Steel Psychology: Lessons from Armored Command. In a chapter dedicated to the Jumbo Sherman's impact, he wrote, "The Jumbo Sherman represented something beyond its technical specifications. It was physical proof that American industry could overcome any challenge. When our tankers realized they could face the dreaded Tiger on equal terms, their entire approach to combat transformed. Simultaneously, when German tankers realized their technological edge had been neutralized, their confidence eroded rapidly. The greatest weapon system is not the one with the thickest armor or most powerful gun. It's the one that changes how both sides think about the battle." Oberleutnant Müller survived the war and became an engineering professor in post-war Germany. When interviewed in 1975, he reflected, "People often ask which Allied tank I feared most as a Tiger commander. They expect me to name the Soviet IS-2 or British Comet. But the truth is, it was the Jumbo Sherman. Not because it was the best tank. Technically, it wasn't, but because it was the tank that shattered our belief in our invincibility. Once that belief was gone, the myth of the Tiger died, even while the tanks themselves continued to fight. The engagement at Retkin Crossroads never received the historical recognition of larger tank battles like those at Kursk or the Falaise Pocket. Yet this small-scale encounter between 5 Tigers and 5 Jumbo Shermans fundamentally altered the psychological balance on the Western Front. The story demonstrates how technological advantages gain their true power not merely from their physical capabilities, but from their psychological impact on both those who possess them and those who face them. In the final analysis, the Jumbo Sherman's greatest contribution to the Allied victory may not have been the enemy tanks it destroyed, but rather the engagements it deterred and the confidence it instilled. In the complex equation of industrial warfare, perception and morale often prove as decisive as production statistics and technical specifications, a lesson that resonates beyond World War II into modern military planning. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II, and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.